Hi, welcome to Chef Richard's Kitchen. I'm Chef Richard Miller. Today we're going to make a regional specialty dish, and I originally, as most of you know, I originally came from Omaha, Nebraska. At least that's where I grew up until I moved to Cincinnati. And one of the things about Omaha and Nebraska in particular is a little stuffed sandwich, kind of like a pocket, you might call it, only they've been around a lot longer. It's called a Runza. And a Runza actually came to Nebraska by way of Germany and Russia. Runzas in America go way back to the days of Catherine the Great in Russia. Catherine the Great invited the German people, the German farmers especially, to live in the Russian lands due to their hard work and their farming knowledge. A lot of the Germans moved there, and they moved around into the Volga region down by the Volga River. These people were known as the Volga Germans, and they lived there and they prospered for many, many years until after Catherine's death they had the Russian reunification, which was essentially everyone that was invited to come over there, you're no longer German or you're no longer whatever, you're going to be Russian, either voluntarily or otherwise. And that set off kind of a migration of these Germans, and they migrated, most of them, to the Great Plains of America, specifically Nebraska. And there was a big Russian settlement around Sutton, Nebraska. And later on, one of the descendants of the Volga Germans, a woman by the name of Sally Everest, moved from Sutton, Nebraska, up to the little Russian village in Lincoln, Nebraska. And there she started making these sandwiches commercially, where she named them a Runza. And this is really the start of it in Nebraska and the surrounding areas. She was the one that really made it popular. Now, the interesting thing is, it's like a lot of the different local foods, like Cincinnati chili and whatever. Once you get out of the original range, such as Nebraska, there are a few isolated spots where Runzas are popular, but get very far out and most never heard of them. I came up here to Cincinnati and I wondered if they had any places that served Runzas, and they looked at me like I'd come from another planet. Well, obviously it hasn't made it up here. So what I thought I'd do is I'm going to bring it up here, and I like them. In fact, the first thing that I do when I get back to Omaha is I usually stop by one of the Runza Huts, which is actually a fast food restaurant around the Omaha-Lincoln area. They're delicious. So what we're going to do is we're going to make Runza sandwiches today, and what they are is we're going to make the bread for them. We wrap beef cabbage stuffing inside, then bake them. And the name comes originally from Bihok, which is what the Germans called them when they moved them to Russia, or when they moved to Russia over there. Later came back over here and they became a Runza. And that essentially was German for belly. And if you look at the typical Runza sandwich, it does. It kind of looks like, a rounded belly underneath. So that's a generally accepted history of how they came over and how they got their name. And so let's go ahead and get started with these. What we're going to do now is the bread. And we're going to start out with 3/4 cup of milk, a half a cup of water. Now what I've done is I've warmed these up to about 105, 110 degrees. And the reason is because this is a yeast bread, and that is the temperature where yeast loves to thrive. So I'm just going ahead and put it in that range and let it go to work. 1/4 cup of salt. And approximately a tablespoon of yeast. Now, as everybody who's watched my videos in the past knows, I use a commercial yeast that comes in a large container. I tend to use more than just what's in that little packet, and that's because when I give it a kick, I want it to rise. I don't want it to have to sit for a long time. I believe in about an hour, and a commercial yeast does that very, very well. All right, so let's go ahead and put this in the mixer. And let's go ahead and stir it in a little bit. Now, all in all, I'm going to have about 4.5 cups of flour with this. Now that this is stirred in, let me put in about a cup's worth of flour. Now, in this case, I'm using bread flour, and the reason I use that, I have bread flour around simply because I make a lot of bread. But can you use all-purpose flour? Absolutely. Yeah, feel free to use it. It works just as well. We'll mix this in a little bit. Then we'll put some more in. I have some salt, I have some shortening, and I have a couple of eggs that I also want to put in here. We'll mix it, we'll knead it, we'll put it in a bowl, and we'll let it rise. While we let it rise, we're going to make our filling. All right, there's looking pretty good there. There's 2. I'm going to put in my shortening. My eggs, and about a teaspoon of salt. Now let's go ahead and let's mix. Okay, let me scrape down the sides a little. And I'm going to put my 3rd cup of flour. They're starting to incorporate well now. pretty wet, so let's go ahead, and it calls for 4.5 cups. But, you know, I'm going to go ahead, we put in 3, that'd be 1.5 cups more. I'm going to go with 3/4 of a cup. I'm going to try it, and I'm going to add it kind of, you know, in small quantities until I get it up to about the right consistency. Okay, that's nice, but it's still, I'm not happy. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in probably a little bit more. This is probably going to get me to about 4.25 cups, something like that. And I think that'll probably be enough. Much better. I'm happy now. It's balling up nice. It's got about the right consistency. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this go ahead and I'm going to let it knead for about 5 minutes, something like that. I'll go ahead and I'll cut the tape out so you guys don't have to sit there watching this while this goes on. Okay, I've let this run a little long. It's been about 8 minutes. And you look at it and the dough is well kneaded, which is good because that's what brings out the glutens. It keeps everything together. So what I'm going to do now, yeah, that's almost perfect how that just slips off the dough hook. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I just took a little bowl, I sprayed a little pan, which is just vegetable shortening in there. And let's go ahead and let's put our dough in here. Let's put it under a little plastic wrap. Now often I do this and I put it under a towel, which is fun, but plastic wrap also is very, very good. It's also very, very good for keeping it from drying out. And the last thing you want is you don't want a big dried out crust on the top of this, inhibiting it from rising. So let me go ahead and let's set that over there. I'm going to let it rise for about an hour. In the meantime, let's go to work making the filling. So give me just a second or so and let me get set up for that. Don't go away. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes on the dough. So what I thought I'd do is go ahead and let's start making the filling. And I wanted to turn the camera off on this mainly because, well, I'm using a mandolin and I don't look too good using a mandolin, especially when I'm scared out of my mind. But let's talk about what we're going to be putting in here. We're going to start out with 2 pounds of ground beef. I generally use 85-15. If you want to use 80-20 or even 90-some, that's fine, personal preference. I also have 4 cups of shredded cabbage, and that's what I was using the mandolin on. I have 2, probably medium-sized onions, diced. I have 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, probably about 3/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper, and here's 2 teaspoons of seasoned salt. Lawry's is fine. That's probably the most common one we'll ever run into. All right, so let's go ahead and go over to the stove now, and let's start the preheating process of the pan. Some oil. Let that heat up, and we're going to brown our beef in there. Okay, it looks like our pan is heated up well. So let's go ahead and brown the beef. All right, I'm going to put the lid on for just a little bit. This kind of keeps the heat in here. Now, we're not browning this so much for, the flavor of the brownness. We're browning it to kind of cook it before we put it in with the rest of the ingredients. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this because this is actually, in a way, steaming it. So let's just let it sit for a while here. This will trap the heat, and it'll brown a little bit faster. Just break this up a little bit. Because when we bite into our Runzas, we don't want clumps. We want ground beef in there. So we'll break it up just a little bit. Okay, here our hamburger is nice and brown. There's still a lot of liquid in there. We want that to boil off. But let's go ahead and put our onions in. We're going to stir these in, and we're going to cook the onions till they're until they're translucent. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to let some of that excess liquid boil out of here and concentrate the flavors. Then when we come back, I'm going to put our seasonings in there, and we're going to put our cabbage. And the cabbage is going to take a little while because we not only have to cook that, we have to let it go for a little while because, as you know, cabbage can be a little tough, and we want these to be tender. So let's go ahead and let's just let this go for a little bit, and we'll be back as soon as this boils down a little bit. Okay, it looks like the onions are pretty well translucent and a lot of the liquid is boiled off. So let's go ahead and let's put in our seasoning. We got a teaspoon of garlic powder, about 3/4 teaspoon of pepper, and one of the things about the Runza is they aren't peppery. And 2 teaspoons of the seasoned salt. All right. Now let's put in our 4 cups of cabbage. And this is going to take a little while, mainly because the cabbage has to not only soften, but it has to cook. And cabbage takes a while. It's not exactly a quick cooking vegetable. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the lid back on, and we're just going to let it steam a little bit, and that'll start cooking the cabbage. So for right now, I'm probably going to cut this part out, mainly because if I don't, it's like watching snow melt. All right, now let's go ahead and let's take our filling and put it in a bowl, and we'll come back and we'll start filling these. Okay, now that our filling mix is pretty well done, let's go ahead and roll out the dough. It's been about an hour or so, and the dough has risen. So let's go ahead and roll it out. All right, here's our dough. What we're going to do here is we're going to roll it out to a desired thickness. And we're going to cut it. Now remember, what we don't roll out this first time, we can always come back and we'll roll the rest of that out and we're fine. All right. All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to put our filling kind of in the middle of this. Now I need to get a little bit better rectangle on here, kind of like that. Now we're going to put our filling in here. Now we're going to roll this over and roll this over again, roll it under and over like this. All right? Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to put it on a sheet of parchment paper where we're going to bake it. And then let's do it again. Roll it once. Roll it twice. Roll it back over. Go ahead and pinch right down here. And there's one more for the sheet. I don't know how this last one's going to come out. It's a bit irregular, but let's give it a try. All right, there's 6. Now let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and preheat the oven to 350 degrees, and then let's bake 150 degrees. Here are Runzas. I've got a 7th here that won't fit on here. I'll bake that separately. But let's go ahead and put these in the oven right now. We're going to put them in for probably 18 to 20 minutes. I'm setting the timer for 18 minutes, and when it goes off, we'll check it. If they're done, great. If they're not, we'll give it another couple of minutes. See you in 18 minutes. Okay, I set the timer at 18 minutes. When I looked at them in 18 minutes, they weren't quite brown enough, so I put them in for another few minutes. They've actually been in there for 24 minutes total. So let's go ahead and pull them out of the oven. All right here is what a Runza sandwich should look like. It's nice golden brown. They're not too burnt. They're not too puffed up. They're not collapsed, whatever, but it's just a very, very nice looking sandwich. So let's go ahead and let's put one on the plate. All right, here's one on the plate. Let me go ahead and cut into it. All right, and as you can see, there's a meat stuffed hand pie, and this is one of my favorite Nebraska foods. Now, remember, there are 4 things that Chef Richard has tried to teach you. Number 1, cooking should be fun. Number 2, the first person and the most important person you ever think of is your guest. Number 3, taste it before you serve it. Don't ever serve anything that you don't personally love. And 4, people eat with their eyes first before they ever get the meal. Now, Runzas in Nebraska are considered fast food. Normally you don't garnish anything, but in the true Chef Richard spirit, we have to put something on there. All right? So, here we've made one of Nebraska's, well, you can pretty much call it Nebraska's food. In fact, there was a big movement at one point to actually name the Runza as Nebraska's state food. Anyway, give it a try. They're not that hard. Try it. You'll like it. Thank you again for watching. Take care. God bless. And remember my prime directive. Yep, you know it already. Cooking should be fun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next episode.